A leading human rights group says racism towards Arab citizens in Israel is on the rise. It says many lack the same basic rights and services that are enjoyed by the Jewish population. So what future is there for Israel's Arabs? Are they really just second-class citizens? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Darren Jordan. An Israeli civil rights group says racism against the country's Arab citizens has risen sharply in the last year. Racist incidents against Arabs has risen by more than a quarter. That's according to a report from the Association for Civil Rights in Israel. It claims that 78% of the Jewish public oppose the inclusion of Arab political parties in the government, while more than two-thirds of them neither accepted living in the same building with Arabs or having Arab friends. The government's responded by saying it's committed to fighting racism and promoting equality. Well, let's take a look at some of the details of the Arab population inside Israel. Arabs make up some 20% of the Israeli population. That includes Muslims, Christians and Druze. That means the current Israeli Arab population is 8 times the size it was in 1948, right after the Arab-Israeli War. Around 71% of Israeli Arabs live in areas that are predominantly Arab and majority Muslim. And about half the Arabs in Israel live in the northern part of the country. That's the land the UN marked as an Arab state in its partition of the area in 1947. Well, joining us to discuss this are guests all from Jerusalem: Hannah Suwaid, an Arab-Israeli politician and member of Knesset; Marcus Sheff, Executive Director of the Israel Project; and Rachel Benziman, Executive Director of the Association for Civil Rights in Israel. Welcome all to the programme. Rachel Benziman, let me start with you, if I may. This report says that racism against Arab citizens in Israel has risen sharply in the last year. What's driving this, and why have you published this report now?
We publish a report on the state of human rights every year. And one of the topics that we decided to cover this year was the rise in racism beliefs and behaviors against the Arab citizens of Israel. We gathered together a number of statistical surveys and looked at some of the things that happen in the legislative body and around the country to have a better look at what is happening to the Arab citizens of Israel. I just want to say that our report, I know that you are probably not going to have time to look at it, but our report covers various other human rights violations, both against the Jewish population and against the Palestinians in the occupied territories, but I know that we're going to talk about the racism this evening. Okay, well, let's talk about, let's bring in Hannah Suwaid now. Israeli Arabs complain that they are treated differently to Israel's Jews. How worried are you by this report?
I think it's a sad day for the Israeli society, for the Israeli establishment, and for the Israeli democracy. Actually, as an Arab, to feel that you are a persona non grata in your homeland and in your state, it's not a good feeling at all. If you feel that the Jewish majority in Israel thinks about you so negatively, and the great majority of them want to get rid of you and want you to immigrate from the state, it doesn't give you a good feeling at all. At the same time, I think it's the government and the government policies, despite the fact that the government of the State of Israel declares every morning that it is committed to equality and to dealing with the Arab citizens in Israel equally, but on the ground we can see discriminatory policies and practices which actually reflect on the wide Jewish public in the state of Israel, and that's the deepest reason actually for these attitudes and these views, anti-Arab views and racism against Arabs.
Well, let's put this point to Marcus Sheff. Marcus, this report quotes polls that say half of Jewish Israelis don't believe that Arab citizens of Israel should have equal rights. If that's true, that's very worrying, isn't it?
Well, yes, of course it's very worrying. Good evening, Darren. I think this is an important report. ACRI continues to do good work, and I'm not alone in thinking that this is an important report. Israelis share that view. In fact, the President of the State of Israel, Shimon Peres, stated very clearly that this is crucially important to Israel. ministers like Ben Eliezer has said how important this is, and Arab Minister Manjaja said exactly the same thing. Israelis take this very seriously. Racism is repugnant. Now, Israel is a thriving democracy. Israel is a place where everything is allowed to be put under the microscope, and I think that's wonderful that it is. It's also a country which must give to all its citizens the ability for them to maximise their potential, to become Supreme Court justices, and there is an Arab Supreme Court justice, to run a hospital, and an Arab runs a hospital, to lead in this country in all the professions. And that does happen. That's wonderful. Now, of course, this report is worrying. This report worries the Israeli establishment very much. But we must remember that Arabs in this country do manage to reach the top of this society. That has to continue. This must continue to be a country where democracy, where equality, where equal rights are there for all. I wish that in the countries around Israel, I wish that in the Middle East, these things were put under the microscope like they are here, and I wish that opportunities were equal like they are here in Israel.
All right. It's an interesting point you make, and I want to put that to Rachel Benjamin. Rachel, the Israeli government, as Mark-a-Chef was saying there, says it's committed to fighting racism and says it's committed to equality for all Israelis, but presumably your report doesn't back that up.
No, I mean there's always this commitment, and it's in the basis of things. But the deeds of the government don't show that. There is underfunding for the Arab population needs, and there is underfunding for only the last war in Lebanon showed that the Arab sector has been underfunded in building shelters for protecting its citizens. I think there is a policy of not. Neglecting the needs of the Arab population for planning. I think that if you look at the south of Israel, at the Bedouins in the Negev, you would see a total neglect of the needs of the population, where houses are demolished every year because there's no adequate planning. I think that the government of Israel has a lot to correct. I think that the treatment of the Arab citizens as potential enemies is very, very worrying. I think if you look at what happens at the airports, when Arab citizens of Israel have to undergo a very, very not only thorough but even humiliating security check, it means that the Arab citizens of Israel are not treated as their fellow Jewish citizens. And I think there's a lot to change in the policy of the Israeli government.
Hannah Suwaid, one of the big issues in this report is the continued lack of human rights, the right to health care, freedom of movement, and so on. How bad are things on the ground?
I just wanted to give one or two remarks about the general situation of the Arab minority here in Israel. First of all, despite the fact that Arabs comprise about 20% of the total population of the state of Israel, the public service only in Israel has 5% of them. Only very, very few Arabs really are in key positions like hospitals or other authorities here in Israel. I just wanted to remind you with one fact. The Deputy Prime Minister in Israel is the head of the party called Israel Our Home, who is Mr. Lieberman. As I said, he's a Deputy Prime Minister. He's the minister responsible for strategic threats. He speaks about Arabs in Israel very openly and and almost every day, very often, that they are a demographic threat to the state of Israel, that they are a fifth column, actually, that the members of the Knesset, the Arab members of the Knesset, should be eliminated because they are accused of treason. Despite the fact that one or two ministers, one of them Arab actually, said that this is a bad situation, but we have other ministers and other parties in Israel, other politicians, prominent politicians in Israel who preach actually for discrimination and for racism in Israel. That's the truth, and this, of course, trickles down to the wide public. And if the wide public hears Here's a prominent minister speaking about a mono-ethnic and clean state. Then he would prefer Arabs not to be here in Israel, but to immigrate to outside.
Okay, I want to just quickly say that we'll move on to the issue of racial profiling in the second part of the programme. But let me bring in Marcus Sheff again before we go to the break. Marcus, I mean, we're talking about the issue of human rights. I mean, do Arab Israelis suffer worsening human rights, as the report suggests? I mean, for example, some 100,000 Arab residents of East Jerusalem have no legal access to water, causing unsanitary conditions and the spread of disease. I mean, how bad is it, and why is this happening?
Well, East Jerusalem's a completely separate issue, and I think you really do have to connect that to the larger strategic issue. I mean, I think what we all really want here is a peace process which will come to fruition so that questions of people in East Jerusalem will be solved. I think, you know, that's really important, and I think you do have to differentiate between that population and populations living in northern Israel. But I think, you know, it's really important. You know, racism is abhorrent, but unfortunately it's universal. I think it's really important not to get into a, you know, Israel hate fest about this particular issue. You know, if in London you're twice as likely as a Pakistani to be arrested, or if in Paris you're twice as likely to be unemployed if you're Arab, if in Darfur you're likely to be murdered because of the colour of your skin, because you're black, I think, you know, this is a universal issue, and, you know, we need to take this as a universal issue. Yes, racism is abhorrent. There is racism everywhere. The question is, what are we going to do about it? The question is, what is it that needs to be done? And I think, you know, it's very clear that we need to take action. We need to be educating our youth into tolerance. And in the north of Israel, you know, that's what's happening now. Children are being brought together. Just a few weeks ago, thousands of children, Jews and Arabs, came together for a march for tolerance. This is exactly what we need to do. And unfortunately, that's not happening in Arab countries, where you get anti-Semitic cartoons in newspapers, where you get anti-Semitic programs on the television, where in schoolrooms hate is being taught. In Israel, in schoolrooms, tolerance is being taught.
Okay.
So, you know, we need to turn to youth, and we need to concentrate on youth to fight racism.
Okay, we'll come back to some of those measures a little bit later in the programme, but it's time for a short break now. But when we come back, we ask, is there any real future for Arab citizens living in Israel? Stay with us.